All right, welcome to the call, guys. This is a Leadership Equipping 2023 September 18th call. We do this typically once a month. For those that have never been on this call before, historically being last year, we did this twice a month. We went down to only once a month in hopes that what was learned was being put into practice, not because it was any less important. Because we were on that bi-weekly cadence, we went to the monthly cadence. And that's what we've been doing throughout the duration of this year. So the hope is always that we actually practice what we preach. It's not merely just theory or concepts, head stuff, right? But it's stuff that actually gets put into motion, into use. So that's the hope with this call. We didn't do this call last month in lieu of actually gathering together the majority of us in St. Louis for the retreat that we had. There was 2.5 days worth of material. It's a really good time. I believe everybody came back rejuvenated, ready to go, kind of refueled for the journey ahead as we move into a big fourth quarter sort of finish of 2023, and also, of course, a launching point for what we hope to be a very successful 2024. So about this call, for those that have never been on this call, and there's a few of you on here, we just really recognize the need for intentional leadership development, and Innovative Heights really saw that this was something that was worthwhile doing. So each of us should be glad that we work for a company that actually believes in this sort of thing, because not many do. In fact, statistically, we see that 83% of businesses actually recognize, and by businesses, I'm talking businesses of all shapes and sizes, different organizations, different types of work, right, out there. They believe that there needs to be leadership development, and they believe that they need it at all levels of their business, but only 5% actually do anything about it. And we truly try to we want to be that 5%. We want to stay in that place of growing skills, shaping attitudes and behaviors, so that each of you can better lead your locations and those that follow you from a team member perspective, right? So that's a lot about what this call is about. It's about leadership development. How to use this call? I know not a lot of people use this information piece. Many people, what's that? Oh, gotcha. Sorry. So how to use this call, just kind of looking at just the best way to get the most out of our time together. First and foremost, engage with the material. Don't be passive. I know there's a lot of people on the line, which is great, but be willing to engage and be active in the discussions. When those questions come up, and they do from time to time within our time together, please engage with the material. I can promise you it will go into the next phase, which is to be transformed. Just by engaging with the material, it's actually going to bring about some measure of change within you as a leader. And then, of course, acting this out, shift in, shift out. Don't just leave it to the call, but actually bring this into use. Even if that's one or even two things from the call, you're going to pull something down from our time together. It doesn't have to be necessarily something from me. That's entirely okay. It can be every bit from somebody else within the call, because we're all learning and growing together. So without further ado, want to kind of open things up with an icebreaker, which I do from time to time. This has just sort of become a staple of these calls. So I'll ask the question, as a child, what did play look like for you? Was it sports? Was it video games, trading cards, dolls, outdoors or indoors? If I were to be honest on my end, a lot of that's, of course, dependent on the age. When we talk about being a child, at various times in my life, when I was younger, it was 3-on-3 basketball or pond hockey, because we had 2 to 3 different little ponds in the area, and we have a lot of winter, unfortunately, here in Michigan, so we'd make the most of it. But I also loved playing with action figures. I had a number of action figures, superheroes, little wrestling guys, and I would have just these entire storylines I would create, and it would span from one day into the next, as long as my parents allowed me to have the entire living room sort of built out with all my action figures everywhere, and my storylines kind of progressing from day to day. And that's something I loved doing. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed doing that with others as well, friends and neighbors, that sort of thing. So what did play look like for you as a child? What was something you enjoyed? How did you spend your days? And feel free to unmute yourself, even add to the chat if you're not able to unmute yourself at this point. Would love to hear from you.
In the summers, it was outside. You're playing in the sprinkler, playing in the woods, building forts, climbing trees, just we were outside. We were really not supposed to be inside. And then in the winter, it was playing in the snow, sledding, like just constantly. And if for any reason it was stuck inside, it was playing, drawing, playing with dolls, dancing, singing, anything to be moving.
I had put in the comments that, and for me, it was camping outside, boating outside. And if I had to be in the house, it was definitely, I like to draw, I like to color. I wasn't a big action figure or video game person.
Excellent. Excellent. Great feedback. Appreciate it. See, Pokemon games, Mario Kart, Outside in the Woods. Love it. Thank you, Daniel Bush.
Going down
What
some
else? What
slick
else?
slides. That's what mine is. Sliding every day, Lance.
Sliding every day. All right. All right. There you go. There you go. And you are a bit younger than I. So I guess as a child growing up, you were sliding on slick slides, huh?
Always. I'm just
Always.
kidding.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Baseball, hockey, Blades of Steel hockey video game. Oh, that one's a blast from the past. Love it. Awesome. Matchbox cars. Excellent. Excellent. Good stuff, man. You guys are filling it out. Awesome. Bike riding, camping. You guys are speaking my language. I love it. I love it. Very good. Very good. Anyone else? Anyone else want to unmute and vocalize games they played, things they enjoyed? Awesome. Great shares. Great shares. You see the whole room kind of lifted up. I know we're not collectively in the same room. This is not like last month where all of us were together for 3 days. But collectively, I don't know if you looked around, but as people kind of shared, especially those that actually verbalized what it was that they enjoyed doing, most recently their Camden, I mean, he just lit up. He's talking about slides, right? Enjoying what he does. We all light up and we all have a level of engagement that just kind of comes up even a little bit when we kind of reminisce. We look back at what was our youth and play as a kid. And it looked different for all of us, largely dependent on our situation and obviously the things that we found to be most interesting. So on this discussion that we're about to have today is less about experiences, although I'm going to kind of center on play. I'm going to use that analogy throughout our time together, but it's really about leadership and it's about those that follow us. So although this seems like we're driving towards talking about guest experience, we're not really going in that direction. However, talking about leadership and the development of those that are following in suit, we need to actually look to play. We need to look at maybe, just maybe, how things were when we were kids and what we enjoyed and how we got other people involved into doing those things we really enjoyed, especially for those that necessarily didn't put video games down, but they might have put something like playing hockey like I did, or even playing dolls, that sort of thing. Could be a place for when, as a child, you played with others and you got along with them just fine and you worked together towards something that you both enjoyed. So we're going to talk about creating movement and what does movement look like. I have this expression I use in my parks, and some parks hear it more than others. And they probably don't love hearing it, but they hear it nonetheless. And it's this: there's really no neutral, at least in the sense of I like to come at leadership from it. There's a no neutral mindset, meaning you can't stay in one place. You're either progressing or you're regressing. I can tell you this much: our competitors, they think this way and they're driving this way forward, even if they don't vocalize it. And so they're not at rest. We're not at rest. And when I say rest, I don't mean you can't take days off, but we've got to position ourselves so that you can take days off and you can actually break away because the standards are in place by those you're leading around you, right? That's ultimately what we want to do. You don't want to be able to step away to kind of pull away from moving forward and instead get pushed backwards, right? So we need to create movement, which requires a measure of, yes, leadership, and for sure, those around us following our lead. And so we're going to talk about creating movement. And we're going to go back to the first question that was asked from day one. And we're still asking this question to this day. And it's, what is leadership? And leadership is defined in so many different ways. It's such a rich word because it largely is detailed out by how we portray leadership based on our demeanor, based on just the way that we present ourselves. Some leaders are strong and solid and maybe even quiet in their leadership. Others are verbose and bold. They're loud, right? And so leadership comes in all shapes and sizes. And because of that, we sometimes have a hard time defining it. But I can tell you this, there's two things that are always attributed to leadership. And it's this: leaders are going somewhere. Leaders have a destination in mind. They are heading in a direction. And that in and of itself is not leadership, but it's a point in which leaders all have commonality. There's agreement. Leaders are heading somewhere. And what's the other piece? They have followers. If you as a leader look behind you and no one's following you, you're not a leader, right? You may just be a lost follower. For those that have heard me say that, there it is again. And so for me, I could have a destination in mind. I'm going to the grocery store, right? But unless people are following me to the grocery store and intentionally following me in particular, I'm just some dude going to the grocery store. I have a destination, that's great, but people aren't following me necessarily. Now, you get enough people who are following me to the grocery store, I may find that to be a little odd. But from an example standpoint, leaders are those that have a destination. They create value as to where they're going. They create sort of a purpose around it, and people begin to buy into that, and they themselves start to follow suit with that particular leader. Speaking of leadership, this is kind of an important thing to know. Becoming a good leader requires first to be a great follower. I don't know if you've ever thought about it this way. You never arrive at just being good or even great in leadership. At one point or another, you had to follow as well. Why? If anything, because those that are following you, they're only going to know how to follow to the depths in which you at some point were able to follow, right? Because you're reproducing yourself in other people. If they don't see that you're a good follower or even a great follower, they themselves are not going to follow you. That just comes with the territory. So becoming a good leader requires first to be a great follower. So I'm going to ask the question. Feel free to unmute. I'd love to hear from at least a couple of you, everyone else in the chat. How do you teach and or train others in your park? What does it look like? Is it show and tell? Is it purely just sort of a, I'm going to tell you to do it and now I'm going to follow up? What does it look like in your park to teach and train others?
Are we doing this in the chat or vocally?
1 to 2 of you, if you can just chat it out, that'd be awesome. Love to hear from you. The others, if you can just put it in the chat, that would be great as well.
Okay.
I'd say myself and Canton. It depends on what coaching it is. You know, as you say, coach up or coach out. You know, if it's the third coaching, that might go a little differently. But you know, typically the first one is you know, I'll be out there with them and I'll show them. So if I'm training a new court monitor, I'll go out there with them. I'll have them kind of watch me and shadow me, and like, you know, I'll be walking the pads. Well, I haven't walked the pads in a little bit now. You know why? But I typically what I do is I walk the pads, and then you know I'm correcting, you know, showing them hand signals and everything that we use, and then I'll let them do it, and then if they need some correction, I'll give them some correction. If not, they're doing a great job, then we praise. So pretty much T-slop, you know.
Absolutely, T-slop. I love it. I love it.
So in Slick City, Chesterfield, something we do when we're training, especially with a lot of new hires that were coming in first, is, you know, obviously walking them through some of our policies and stuff like that. But I don't just tell them what the policy is or how we do something. I ask them why they think we might do it that way, and get them to think about why these things are in place for, you know, as simple as selling a pair of socks. We actually have a 10 to 15 minute conversation just about socks. And I am asking them, why do you think these things are important? Getting them to think about it, because when they understand the why behind something, it's a lot easier for them to also execute on it. Also, Laura might be my echo in the background. But yeah, so making sure they understand the why, because then it also helps them with their future development, being able to think for themselves and follow up on all that. And of course, everything else everybody's saying in the chat about leading by example, showing, and all that.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. And you know me, really big fan of the why, right? So there's the what, that's the how, and there's the why. And constantly trying to get back in front of our people and reposition the why of the company. Yes, the why of the day. We're going after sales. We're going after running safe, clean, and fun location. But really the why. Why are you here? Why are we doing what we're doing? Love it. Thank you for the feedback. Last month, we did this thing called Decide, Commit, Succeed. And it wasn't just a one-off 3-day retreat, 2.5 days worth of material. It's something that's been brought back to the park, and it's not disconnected from the conversation we're having today. In fact, it's every bit a part of that. And so last week or last month, Taking Ground for Your Park looked like at the Decide, Commit, Succeed retreat, growing a conviction center, coming to decisions and being able to vocalize them, learning how to be committed to those decisions. Because if you decide on something but you don't commit to it, it's just something that's taking up headspace. It's not something that's an actuality. Recognizing methods that will help bring those we lead into the commitment process. And of course, we learned so much more and we grew in so many other ways. But these are just 4 things I wanted to kind of reflect on. The last piece being the most important to this discussion today. And it's recognizing methods that will help bring those we lead into the commitment process, because that's ultimately what we need. The goals that were set, although maybe you were not at Decide, Commit, Succeed last month, but it came back to your park. And staff goals, sales goals, service goals, those things were being vocalized. Why? Because leaders set vision and they vocalize, they verbalize the vision that they're setting for their team. And it requires a team. It cannot be done in isolation. The goals that were set were not one-off, singular goals for one guy or one gal to do. It takes a team. It takes followers that are being led by someone, right? And so I want to talk about that today, talk about following, talk about what we can do maybe differently within our fold to get the most out of our people. Yes, to complete the goals that are at hand, of course, but more importantly, to bring more value to the position that they have in the company so that we can be the kind of company that we all want to be when it's all said and done. So looking to our followers, a lot of people would say the $1 million question, not just in our business, but many businesses. In fact, this shows up a lot on the little surveys that I send out from time to time in asking, what do you want from these calls? And almost always I get asked the question, how do we motivate? That's the question that's almost always asked. That and conflict resolution is brought up a lot. But how do we motivate? How do I motivate my team? It's great that I have this goal. It's great that the park has this goal. But if only my team would do what they're supposed to do. If only I can get them to row in the same direction as myself. We were going good for a little while, and now they've fallen off, right? They've stepped outside of where we were trying to head. So how do we motivate? And that could every bit be the $1 million question. But I'm here to tell you, and I'm going to just kind of throw a stone at this glass window. How do we motivate? I don't believe that's the right question. In fact, I don't think that's the $1 million question at all. I don't believe it comes down to motivation. Now, hear me clearly. I'm not saying motivation's a bad thing. Rah, rah, cheerleader, let's go, celebrate the wins. All of that is amazing and it's worthwhile and we should do it. I just don't believe it carries the amount of weight, nor less, I don't believe it is as strong of a pursuit that we should have in our business. Yes, motivate. But more importantly, I believe we should be asking this question: how do we incorporate those followers into where we're going? That truly is the question I think we need to be answering if we're to really take ground and do the things that we know we're able to do and we want to do. How do we incorporate those followers into where we're going? And get used to the language of followers. I know that seems a little odd, but as a leader, you have what? Followers, right? They're your team members. They're your managers, and they're following you. And at times, maybe you're taking some following from them, right? You're following a leader that's around you. I have people I follow. I have people I'm leading, quite obviously. But how do we incorporate? Well, that word incorporate seems like the word incorporation, right? A legal business entity. But what I mean by incorporate, I mean to unite or work into something already existent so as to form an indistinguishable whole, or to blend or combine thoroughly. Oh, but we're all individuals. Yes, we're all individuals until we get that Sky Zone shirt on, right? That Slick City shirt on. And now we're working for Chesterfield. Now we're working for Sky Zone Canton. And even in some of the parks, we have language like the Canton Crusaders or the Grand Rapids Slayers. Combined together as a team, we're working towards a cause. Yes, as individuals, but we're united and we're working into something that's already existed to form an indistinguishable whole. We're working together. Why? Because these goals are far too big for us to do it on our own. So in incorporation, I want to talk a little bit about what we should never do. We're never to manipulate. That's a poor man's version. And actually, I would go so far to say it's not even a poor man's version. It's a version we should never even move towards. and that is we never manipulate. And there are some leaders out there who are great manipulators. They're not great managers. They're for sure not great leaders, and they manipulate. They use emotional manipulation. They do all sorts of things to kind of get people to do what they want. So we never manipulate. Just the same, we often motivate, though. We should motivate. That is something that is really good to do. Rah, rah, let's go. We're winning, celebrating the wins. This is a good thing, right? We never manipulate. We often motivate, but we always should incorporate. Incorporate your people. Look to the why, much like Reese had shared earlier. What's the why behind the reason they're here? What's the why behind our business? What are we trying to accomplish? What's the greater purpose of the business as a whole? So as leaders, we never manipulate, not ever. We often motivate, and we always incorporate. With that being said, I want to just take a moment, and hopefully you're going to think back to what you did as a child that you enjoyed, the way of play. And I want to look at play, and I want to kind of open this discussion up from here on out around this idea of play. So thinking of play, I was thinking about my own children. Their ages 13, 11, and 9. My youngest, being my daughter, still plays much this way. She enjoys just sort of imaginary play. And when you look at kids in the way that they play, take, for instance, the example that I'm going to give with my daughter, which is a couple months back, we were at a family retreat, or not a family retreat, we're at a family reunion on my wife's side of the family. And her and some of the other kids, many of which she didn't know all that well, began to play. And part of that play was they had these little squirt guns, and they started to play cops and robbers. And they did this rather organically. They just decided, hey, here are these guns. We're going to play. I'm going to be a cop. I'm going to be a robber. And you can play this however you'd like. This could look like superheroes and villains, however you want to go about it. Think back to when you played as a kid. You did the same thing. You would just kind of divvy out roles. Often you would just take a role into yourself. You would have a storyline, and you would just play it. And you would play it, and you would enjoy it. And this thing only works if everyone can kind of come into congruency, come into relationship to the overall story you're trying to play. Cops and robbers doesn't work when someone shows up to the game, comes to play, and says, I'm going to be a spaceman today, and I've just arrived. No. It doesn't work that way, right? That kid's not going to be allowed in the midst of what's being played out in front of all the other kids. And the kids are going to have a great time. And that's what kids do. They actually just come together, they play out a storyline, and they take on a role. And there's never a dull role, if you've ever seen that. They don't have a dull role. Even the dullest of roles within what they're playing somehow gets elevated because they refuse to play the game and not have some sort of purpose in it and have something that's worthwhile to do, right? And so that's one way to look at play, imaginary play. And again, just looking at my own children, I even look back to preschoolers I've seen do this because I'm actually a teacher from time to time in the preschool at the church I attend. And children of 4 and 5, they do this. They'll grab sticks off the ground. They'll all have little guns that they're shooting with, whatever. And they can have the smallest stick. And that little gun now becomes a laser gun, which is better than a gun with bullets, a laser gun that has a force field, whatever it might be. They refuse to be put in a position that their role doesn't matter, that they don't have a say in the game that they're playing. But it only works when there's congruency, when there's alignment as to what we're trying to accomplish. I'm not saying it happens perfectly. There's arguments that do happen. And sometimes parents, adults, we step in and we have to sort that thing out. I know this because my daughter, who's 9, she can be seen as a little bossy. She's going to make a great leader one day because she's already adopting and adapting that mentality of leadership. But for some, she can be a little bossy because she knows what she wants. She just really hopes everyone else around her aligns with what she wants. And I have to tell her, Adeline, not everyone's going to want to play that today. They want to play this. They don't want to play that. And try to find a way to make it work. Not everyone can be Batman. Not everyone can be Spider-Man. Well, I spoke too soon. There's a lot of Spider-Mans out there if you've seen the latest and greatest Spider-Man movies, right? With that being said, looking at play can be really key. And sometimes I think we can look past that because we think of that and we go, that's when I was young. That doesn't apply so much. We're adults. We're trying to do this job. And well, things are that much more difficult. But I think it actually would be what would serve well for us to look at play and how important that is, even in our day and age. So with that being said, here are some things I extracted from just looking at my own children and really seeing it in preschoolers that I oversee. They always come under a story and a purpose. There's roles, and really there's a what and a why. This is what I'm going to do, and this is why I'm going to do it. And then there's endless fun. As long as things are aligned, and most often they are, this is what I'm doing, and this is how I serve to the greater story, the greater purpose. There's endless fun. If you can follow that analogy to where we're at, there's a story, there's a goal, there's a shift that we're trying to lead onto a certain amount of sales, onto a certain amount of labor, right? We're trying to run safe, clean, and fun. Here are the roles that are played out right in front of us. And we're going to have not just so much endless fun. Yes, we can have fun while doing it, but we're actually going to achieve our goals. And winning is fun in these moments. We're doing good things, and we know we're doing good things. So with that being said, I don't think there's really much of a difference between us and when we were kids, playing out those things we really enjoyed, those things that we found to be just fascinating. We could spend hours doing. Even if you don't think about the cops and robbers analogy, and you go to playing pond hockey or 3-on-3 basketball, you play by certain rules, you're playing up to a certain score, things are outlined in advance. And as long as you're playing that game, and as to how it's outlined, you're going to have a good time, right? You may not win every time, but you're going to have a good time. If you show up to football, but you want to play basketball, there's going to be some disagreements, right? So it's not all that different for us if you really apply this. And with that being said, it's really important. If we're to embrace this further, it's about embracing being more childlike as a leader. And for those that follow you, not being childish. That's a key distinction. It's not about immaturity. It's about a level of maturity that actually has a childlike mindset around what we do. I mean, we're Sky Zone, we're Slick City, we're Innovative Heights. One of our core values is make it fun, for crying out loud, right? No one has a scalpel. No one's performing brain surgery. I know sometimes it feels like the stress levels are there, but if you're performing brain surgery, we're not insured for that. Please step out of the park right now, right? So we are trying to adopt more of a childlike mindset, not a childish mindset. And when you do that, I think you're going to find you're unlocking parts and portions of your team that you've never seen come alive before. I've seen it with kids. I've seen it with teams. I've seen it time and time again. I just couldn't put my finger on it until today. With that being said, don't just take my word. As I dove into this and as I saw this happening between my own kids and some preschool kids and really the teams that I've led in the past, I found that to incorporate actually brings about an equilibrated state. And I saw this in studies done by organizational psychologists and, of course, child behavior psychologists as well. There's this thing called an equilibrated state, which is really just when all parties involved actually come to a place in which they've reached their purpose and they're actually working together to a common goal, a common theme. In the case of play, it looks like a story being played out. I'm a cop. You're a robber. I'm Spider-Man. You're Superman, whatever it might look like. And we're going to play unto this story. And when this is happening, there's agreement and it's a good thing. And everybody's maximizing their role. They're seeing themselves actually adding to the story, adding to the shift, adding to the day. Because we could take this analogy and we could see it in other areas of our work life as well. In fact, someone did this. This particular organizational psychologist took many studies done over the years as to what happens when we're functioning at an equilibrated state, when we're working together towards a common goal, a common purpose, or to take from the analogy, a story that we're playing out and we all have a role in it that we play. And what this individual saw time and time and time again was that it was a 10% increase in work production that can occur as a result of an equilibrated state. So when you're working together and you have right alignment, you're actually going to get a 10% increase. I don't know about you, but I could use a 10% increase in production on my day. I'm sure you can at your park, towards your sales, towards labor, right? A 10% increase in how effective you are with labor, not a 10% increase in your labor, but a 10% increase all the way around. We could all utilize that at any given time, but we need to unlock our teams. We need to get our followers to really follow suit that much closer to where we're heading. So let's look at this again. Story, purpose, roles, what, why, endless fun. And we'll break it out further. With story, How do you agree? How do you get agreement across your group in terms of goals? This is a really big one. Think about your day to day, your shift in, shift out. How are you getting agreement across your group in terms of goals? This is no different than the kids gathering to play a game, play out a story, and they just kind of organically, sometimes there's little squabbles, but I wanted to be that. I wanted to be that, right? But they sort it out inevitably. How do you get agreement, though, with your park teams in terms of goals that you set? What are you doing in those huddles?
So in Shelby, and Stephanie can attest to this, we ask our team members, what is your 1% goal today? So what's like a measurable goal, like something you can actually hit and something like you want to hit. So we ask them, and then in the post-shift huddle, we ask, did you hit your goal today? What could you do to like hit it? If you didn't hit it, things like that. So that's how we're asking our team, like, what are your goals today? Do you want to get 50 sky fives up on the as a court monitor, helping a kid go down the slide, things like that, selling memberships, ices.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're getting their buy-in. They're part of the goal setting, correct? Awesome. Anyone else? How are you getting agreement across your group? Because it takes a measure of agreement. Remember, a leader has followers. And if you're ascending a mountain and you're going together, you can't have someone abandon midway through the trip. That's just not safe, right? If you're climbing a mountain, use that analogy for a moment. You're doing this together. So how are you getting right alignment? How are you getting agreement? Maybe agreement's too strong of a word, but you're working together across the day. How are you getting that to happen, at least from the get-go? What are you doing?
So one thing we do in Grand Rapids is I always ask in the interview what their goals are for their own lives. I say, what do you want to do? And they'll say, well, I want to do this. I want to do that. And then I'll say, okay, how can this job help you get there? So the people that are high performing people on the team, they're the ones that had an answer when I asked that question. And then they start to see themselves, they see how doing a good job here will help them wherever they want to be. So for instance, one of our managers, Colin, was the first person that I hired when I started here. And I asked him what he wanted to do. And he told me at the time he wanted to go into the military. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. What are you looking to do? And he said, well, I'd like to do like maintenance, like working on tanks and stuff, or be a mechanic. And I said, well, hey, we actually have this role here where you can do maintenance. And the joke that he makes fun of me for now is I said to him at the time, well, I'm sure tanks have springs on them somewhere. And he ended up not going into the military, but now he's an assistant manager here. So he started to see himself in the business and how doing that one role might help. So for example, if somebody comes up to you and says that if in the interview, if they say that they want to be in law enforcement, we had a manager that at one point wanted to do that. Well, hey, being a court monitor, that's a great way to get into law enforcement.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And having heard that example and seen that example in action in your park, having that ability to tie back sort of their life pursuit to what they're doing, because, I don't have time to go into it all on this call. There are a number of studies that also very much reflect that reality, that when you have people aligned from a place of what they want to do versus like their overarching goal in life. For instance, we're doing DCS personal goals, and there's a handful of you that said, hey, I want to have a personal goal setting session where we do that with myself, right? And that hasn't like fallen to the side. We're still going to do that. But part of what we'll do during our time together is actually look at your overarching, what do you want to do in life at age 33 or age 40 or age 25 or whatever it might be? And how does Sky Zone, how does Slick City, how does Innovative Heights like align with that? Because if your life pursuit doesn't have us in the mix, then you're always going to have that sort of contention. The same is with our people. And so you're doing a form of that. Hey, you want to go off to, be an airplane mechanic. Well, like you said, I'm sure there's springs somewhere on those planes, right? And so you're aligning sort of where they want to go to where they're at today and how they can kind of build off one another. And that's great. And you said another thing there really special is it's not just in the huddle. I use that as an example, but at like the interview, especially at the orientation, right? This is what we do. This is who we are. This is the role you play in that. But also, what are you trying to get out of this as well? Which is a way that I've worded it with people that I lead. What are you trying to get from this? I ask that also because if I end up working with that person, I want to be positioned to be able to hopefully give them those things to some measure, right? So awesome. Great share. Anyone else? How do you get agreement across your group in terms of goals? Excellent. Well, there'll be plenty of time to share. We got some other questions here. So again, story, purpose, roles, the what, the why, what we do and why we do it. Endless fun. Or we just achieved the goal. We reached the mountain peak. And now we're looking over and, oh, don't you know there's another mountain peak. Now it's time to descend and ascend once again. And it gets easier as we do it because we learn a whole lot along the way. So story, purpose, roles, what, why, endless fun. Another question here. What intentional coaching moments have you had with your team this past week? And by this, I want you to think about roles. To borrow the analogy of kids playing, they don't allow themselves to have a dull role. They just won't have it, or they won't play. Why would they play and do something if they end up being, I don't know, I want you to be a wall. Oh, I get to be the wall. Or I want you to be a tree. Excellent. I get to be the tree. No one wants to be the wall or the tree, right? So kids will almost always find a way to take a role and make it impactful. Why? Because they want to have purpose in what they do. So what are you doing? And maybe it's very similar to what Devin just mentioned. But what intentional coaching moments are you having with your team through the week to really move the needle, to press things ahead?
I'm doing a lot in starting with the sky huddles and then follow up. And I've been in and out because we're surprisingly busy right now. So I don't know what was already said, but as I know that Aaron had talked about how we're like setting goals and such, but part of those goals has been play, has been let's have fun. What's your 1% and how you can grow in that 1% and pulling play out of that. Like, what can we do to play with our guests? And one thing I like to say when I'm coaching and when I'm teaching courts, I actually have been saying this a lot daily too, has been you actually have an opportunity to change somebody's entire day. Like, you have that opportunity to be remembered today. You do. Like, you never know. They could be coming in with the worst day ever and leaving so happy, and you're going to be that person's name that they're going to be talking about. And the guest will tell us about that, and then they'll come back. Like, I love that. Like, I love the thought that they might be a person that can completely change somebody's day. But that's been almost daily talking with the team about that and getting them to interact with the different guests that are out there.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you utilize play in the park. Again, we are a fun brand. Sometimes I think we forget that. And sometimes I think we come to a conclusion that, well, it's fun for everybody else but us. Here's the reality. The team member experience, or rather the guest experience, will never surpass the team member experience. That we know. And so we have to have fun. Yes, there has to be a level of responsibility around that. Again, it's not about being childish. It's about childlike mentality, kind of operating with a childlike spirit around what we do and how much enjoyment we take from what we do. We can be so calculated and so adult-like and say, oh, yeah, that was great when I was a kid, whatever. I didn't have concerns and worries and whatever. Well, I'm here to tell you that there's a lot of genius in kids that we have lost along the way as we grow up, per se. They come to things, problems in particular, with solutions that we could never imagine ourselves because we just struggle to see outside the box. So if you ever have a deep problem that you have, you're kind of in a pickle, whatever it might be, you might want to ask kids for the answers because sometimes they'll give you an angle that you never thought was even there, but they see things differently. We at one point saw things differently. And all I'm saying is I think there's something to that and worth looking at in our parks and how we interact with our teams and how we get the most out of them, and for them to get the most out of what we do, to be quite honest. Anyone else want to share intentional coaching moments you have with your team? What you're doing, the reactions you're having? Please feel free to share.
Hey Lance, I'll share what Ashley's doing for us in Milwaukee. Every Sunday she's following up basically with how we reached our sales goals as far as memberships, IC add-ons, events overall, just a great outlook on how the week occurred and what we can do to improve on the goals that we didn't meet. So I think that's a great teachable moment, even if it's, you know, just to the leadership team to see where we stand, and great follow-up in that.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I mean, as far as like specifically what she's doing, and I know Ashley, you're on here, so feel free to share. Love that Kevin's speaking on your behalf, but yeah, feel free to share and just give some additional context to what you're doing. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, pretty much. I found a big old whiteboard in our storage closet the other day. Well, not the other day, but like a month or so ago, and had no idea what I wanted to do with it. And then I thought, oh, what if I wrote, you know, all of last year's sales on it for every single day, then what our goal would be for the day. And then at the end of the day, or maybe the next day, I'd write what we made that day to compare what we could have done better. I'll write memberships and IC add-on goal for the day as well. And then I'll write that for the whole week. I'll get it prepared on Sunday night for the next week. And pretty much just I add all the last year's sales together and get that total. Usually I leave out Sunday just because of doing it on a Sunday, so I don't know the total of what we made for that day yet. So I try to do it Monday through Saturday, and I just try to get not just my employees, but my management team to follow along with me. I think it starts with management, and you know, them being leaders to the employees will make us more successful. I like to compare what we made this year to what we made last year, and sometimes we don't always make more. And I always try to give an example of how we could be better on that. You know, AKA memberships and pitching memberships, and IC add-ons as well. And that's something that we're struggling a bit here in MKE. So I always try to give a reasonable goal of what we could sell in a membership. Sometimes it's just one, because sometimes we struggle just to sell one. But then other days we sell 4. So, you know, sometimes it makes up for it. But yeah, I have it posted on our wall. I'll send a picture of it either Sunday night or Monday morning, just letting them know, like, you know, we didn't make as much as we did last year. Here's what we're going to do. It's not what we can do, it's what we're going to do, because everyone's going to be on the same page. And yeah, sometimes it works out well. Sometimes, you know, we don't make as much, and that's okay. We'll just do better the next week then.
Excellent. No, I appreciate your share. And no, I was just coming off a call with Wade, Michael, Kevin, myself, and we were just talking about goal boards and sort of coming to terms with a company-wide utilized goal board. So more to come on that. But I love that, sort of kind of putting it front and center with them. And one thing I would say even for that, trying to, and maybe you're doing some form of this, and this is for everyone on the call. So, you know, on a day you say, well, we're going to do 10 memberships, and then sort of dividing and conquering. Okay, we need to do 10 memberships. How many can I get from you? Or how many are you good for? Right. And kind of going across the room. Now I know we have multiple shifts across the Saturday, whatnot. Right. So you almost have to break that up a little bit differently, but you want to kind of divvy that out and say, hey, I'm going to have who wants this much, or who's going to happen. And everyone's going to kind of be part of the collective whole. Again, it kind of goes back to that mentality of everyone takes on a role and we're all building to something on the day. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we have 10 memberships. We got to move those today. That's the goal. Can I get you for 2? Can I get you for 3? Right. And then what you're going to have is people saying, yeah, that's me. I'm going to take that on. I'm going to be part of the solution. I'm going to take on that role today and hopefully drive that number to where it needs to be. Just one way you can do it. Sometimes that's assigned. I know some parks are utilizing individual kind of scorecards or goal cards they can kind of hand out. Here you go. This is the goal for you today, all based on their experience. And of course, getting to that goal is at 10 memberships, you know, it should be a % to sales. And we've talked about that before as well. But yes, coaching moments, having those visual aids, all very important. So this is one of the organizational psychologists I read on who actually did these studies on childhood behavior and how that actually is connected to the workplace of all things. Jean Piaget said, if children fail to understand one another, it is because they think they understand one another. I'm going to tell you, I don't think that's far off from us, right? So as adults, as individuals working at innovative heights, if we fail to understand one another, there's a good possibility it's because we're actually under the false sense that we actually do understand one another. And so we're coming at it thinking, well, I totally get this guy. I totally get where she's coming from. There's a high probability that I really don't. And so the same as it goes with kids, I believe it goes with us. And it's something worth looking at. And that's why coaching moments are so important. It's why laying out what the day's supposed to look like, the shift goals, right? The shift huddles at the end of the night, talking about what didn't get hit or the successes we had, right? Because we still want to motivate. We still want to cheer. All of that's really important. But it ultimately comes down to there was just a lack of understanding. And we are going off the false pretense that we actually do understand each other when really we need to slow down for a moment and get to know each other that much better. And so again, story, purpose, roles, what, why, endless fun. So these are some of the things that hopefully you took from our call today. Incorporate those you lead. Never manipulate, not that anyone on here who would do that, right? Always, or at least some of the time, motivate, always incorporate, right? So never manipulate, sometimes motivate, or at least often do it, and incorporate those you lead on a regular basis. Verbalize the vision, where you're going, what you want to accomplish. Equip them for the journey. That's part of what we're doing today. We're equipping you further. Look to what is their why. Reese mentioned that earlier. I'm a big believer in that as well. What is their why? Devin mentioned how he does that when he hires somebody. Why are they here? There's plenty of places that are going to pay more than we do, but what is their collective why? Could their why be, well, I jumped here when I was 5 years old. I loved this place. It doesn't even feel like a job. I knew as soon as I could work here, I would work here. And maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something else, right? Maybe it's their kids went to the park. They were members, for crying out loud, and they enjoyed the park. They loved the park, right? That could be their why. What is yours? Think about what is your why. And when we put that together, we actually get that connection we're looking for, that incorporation of values, that overarching storyline that we're trying to kind of play out in our day, because that's ultimately what we're doing. And looking at how the destination can benefit both of you. This is where we're going on the day. How is that going to benefit you in your overarching pursuit in life, where you want to head off to, what you want to do? Because ultimately, we want to be the place where people want to go. In a war on talent, and there's every bit of war on talent right now, and we can't rest easy. There are people gunning for your people because we have some talented folks. It doesn't all come down to money. If we go off the best job ever stats tell us the number one thing that keeps people coming back or looking to the job that they love the most is what? They were able to achieve more than they ever thought possible. So we as leaders have that ability to expand their vision and include them in it as to what we can all accomplish, because we must be that place that is the best job ever for those that we lead and that for those that ultimately follow our leadership. So last question. What is one takeaway from this call that you can put into action? What is something that you're looking to put into action in terms of play in the park? And again, it's analogy. It's an analogy of what kids do on the playground and how they come to terms with a game they're going to play or a story they're going to play out, right? But that's not too far off from what we're trying to do when we do that pre-shift and then ultimately that post-shift huddle. What are you going to be doing different? Or what are you going to be doing more of in your park, especially in the next few weeks? Because we're going to have a quick turnaround to kind of take part of what is a 2-part series. This is the first of 2 parts, just so you know, because we're going to talk about destination next time. We jumped right into following and getting people to follow that much better. So what are you going to do in your park? Would love to hear from you, at least a few of you. Everyone else, if you could just add to the chat, that would be awesome.
One thing to take away from this call for me is I want to do what Chris is doing in her park. I don't know if I'm gonna do it or if I'll delegate the task, but just getting somebody to, you know, track sales and all that stuff, and then just like getting it out to the team, you know, letting them know like whether or not we hit our goals for the week, and then coaching where needed, and you know, praising where needed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cody, do you mind me using the example? You don't have to like name drop by any means, but by me asking you in front of a group of people, I'm almost already put you in the spot where you have to. So my apologies. With this being said, the example I want to go off of, you had an issue where you were trying to draw someone into sort of an expectation in an area of the business. It wasn't all that long ago, right? And you were trying to get them to do a certain level of work or an expectation, a standard that you had. But you found what? That you didn't necessarily vocalize that or verbalize that very well for that person. Remember that?
Yep.
So what was the key takeaway from that outside of the discussion we had around what you were trying to do versus what they were or were not doing? What was the big takeaway, if there was one?
The big takeaway for me was just like not following, well, first of all, not setting clear expectations and communicating clearly, number one. And then number two, was just not following up with them, seeing if they needed extra assistance or see if they didn't, or seeing if they understood the role that they were in. So it was really just like you always say, it's fortunate the follow-up. So it's really just a follow-up that I took away. It was a big part of what I took away from it.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And with that individual, or really, this is for anyone here, giving someone something to do, an area of ownership. And some of you do this really, really well, and you're experts on it, and you should be teaching on this by all means. But for some of you, maybe that's not something you do all that well. But for all of us, we can stand to understand that when you give away some ownership, in the case of maybe an area of the park, it can look every bit like, here's the communicated expectations. Here's a handful of things that you must do if you're going to have ownership in this area of the park. The role you're going to play must look like this. But outside those handful of things, you can do whatever else you'd like. Make it your own. Because in that ownership piece is going to come more pride and a measure of trying to achieve excellence and really purpose for what they're doing with us. And truly, they find a measure of love in what they do. And I think you've seen that now, Cody, to some degree. I don't want to speak out of turn, and you don't need a name drop, but you're going to start to see some people come alive under your leadership because you've drawn clear expectations, but you've also freed them up to do some other things outside of just those handful of things that they must do, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. And thank you for being my guinea pig just now. I kind of threw that at you. So
no worries. I'm always ready. I'm just kidding. I'm not always ready, but I'm ready.
Always ready. I'm ready to rock. I'm always ready. Awesome. Anyone else? What are you taking away from this call? What might you do different or you're going to do more of? Remember your DCS goals. Decide, commit, succeed. These are not goals done in a vacuum. You can't do them on your own. You are trying to ascend a mountain to a peak that you've never reached, or maybe you have, but it's been a while, and you're doing it with a group of people. How's that truly going for you presently? For some of you GMs on this call, we have an all-in call next week where we're going to actually talk about our progress so far. So don't take that lightly. That's reality. That's what we're going to be doing. What will you do different to ensure everyone is on the same page and you're driving towards the same goals? It doesn't have to be anything major. It can be something very small. We're talking 1% initiatives to continue moving things forward. In terms of huddles, does everyone have a shareable huddle that they could do? You could video it, you could share it, and it would be at the level you want it to be right now.
You mean like the Sky Huddle for today? I didn't even finish it yet. I'll be completely honest. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm talking more of like a video share, all in, Sky Huddle. It's more of just looking for the little areas of opportunity. Sometimes we find, well, I do this every day, rote routine, I'm great at it, or at least I'm good at it. But it's about finding that continuous improvement muscle, right? Getting better, sort of sharpening our skill set, improving on even the little things, because over time it compounds and it becomes the bigger things. So don't look past that any, right? There's little things you could do differently and you could get more mileage. And I hate to put that to terms with our people because it makes it sound like we're kind of utilizing them. But in a lot of ways, yeah, I mean, they're not doing this voluntarily, right? There's not volunteer work necessarily. We're paying them, right? Just the same. But we want to really position things to a purpose. Our purpose, yes, but their purposes as well. So if I'm taking something away, it's to just be reminded that when I'm interviewing, even for the roles that I interview people for, I'm going to try to find more about their why. Why us? Are they just trying to apply to every job up and down the road? Nothing wrong with that. You got to work. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. However, I'd like to know why us. Why us? Why are you picking us? That's something I would take from it. Now, for 2 GMs on the call, to wrap our time up, your decide, commit, succeed goals, any one of the 3 that you have going on, staffing, sales, service, any one of those 3, if you can just speak to what it is and how well it's coming along, I would love that. So 2 of you, if you could just share what the goal is and where are you at with it.
So this is Josh. Stephanie's not here currently because we are super busy and just had everybody get off at 2.
Oh, wow. Wow. Super busy on a Monday. That's crazy. Welcome to September.
Yeah. Yeah, we count already.
Yeah. Nice to see you, Josh. Nice to see you. Awesome.
Stuff.
Hannah, so quiet Hannah. How are you doing with your goal setting?
Hi. I was kind of thinking about which one I feel like we're doing the best with, but the one that we're like really hounding on, I feel like the most is sales. As far as like staffing and stuff, it's kind of just go with the flow easy out in Murph. I've never had I'm blessed as far as applicants and stuff. So yeah, I would probably say sales is our biggest focus. And as far as how well it's going, I would say really well. Not to toot our own horn here, but they're just killing it in memberships and they're driving them. And they're probably doing the best even when I'm not at work. So I don't know. Our goal was to be able to sell 5 a day. But during the weekdays, it's just not attainable just yet. And then they're just like really overdoing it and making up for it on the weekends. So overall it's going well though. I'd say it's progressing well. It's not just like some like show that they're putting on for a couple of days and then, kind of slacking back. It's pretty consistent and we're using the smart cards, and that's a way that I'm able to track it to really see that there's goals being set every day. And they leave them every day. Like I have this little spot on my desk, and they leave all their smart cards here, and the party surveys and stuff are here. But yeah, so I'm able to like go through like these are all the ones from the weekend. So I can go through those and just kind of touch base with the employees and see if they met their goals and why didn't they. Because I like the post.
I'm sorry.
You're okay.
I was supposed to know. It's all right. I grab a shirt. This shirt is awesome.
Yes. You're okay. You're okay. Sorry.
That's right.
But yeah, so like the post shift totals are important stuff, but I'm not always here for those. And I like to personally like, be able to touch base and really see where we're at. So yeah, I would say so far so good. Long story short.
Awesome. Appreciate the share. Excellent.
Go
Glad to hear
ahead.
the smart cards are working for you. Yeah.
Thank you, Cody.
If you need another person to share, I'm willing to share. Sure.
Sure.
My service goal was to, and I'll be vulnerable, and how the park was, to get the park in a way better spot than what it was, just facility wise, cleanliness, risk management, all that stuff. And you had a walk with us recently, and you said it was a lot better than it has been in the past, and so I was proud of that. And I think our goal's going really well right now. We still got a couple more things we need to improve on, but I think we're a lot better now. Our facilities are a lot better, a lot more we're a lot more risk management focused, and a lot cleaner. So I think that's going pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys have taken some ground, and just when you think that you've arrived, right, it's the next leg of the journey, right? So I think that's the tension, and you'll see that with the next call that I'm going to be hosting here in the next few weeks. It's going to be a shorter turnaround, not so much bi-weekly. We're not going to get back to that cadence, I don't think, anytime soon. But never say never. We're at the once a month, and I want to talk about destination, and so we kind of live in the tension of shift to shift goals, but then the overarching, like, there's these bigger goals that we have too that I wouldn't say they're unending, but they well, the terminology is there's the finite game we can play, and we know finite games and how they're played, to a particular score, for instance. And then there's the infinity games. These things go on and on and on. You just play for sport. You play because you enjoy it, much like the analogy of kids playing and enjoying themselves. So they just play, and they play until they're told that you got to come indoors. You got to come back inside. You got to eat dinner or whatever. And that's a mentality shift for us, is how can we play more in our parks and have a good time? All right, one more share before we wrap up. It's a little after 2:00 Eastern Standard Time. Any other shares?
Hi, I'm Kim Dunlap from Katy, Texas. Opening up the new park. I do want to say, you did a great job. You would have motivated me if you were talking about, I need to eat healthy, I need to work out. I mean, goodness. So just happy to be part of the team. And you all have showed me, gave a lot of insight on everything. So you're great job.
Oh, thank you.
So I look forward to working with each and every one of you.
Absolutely. You find yourself with some special people. We got some incredible people around us, and we love having you, on board here. Obviously, it'll be a while before I get down to Katy, Texas. I'm sure of that, but hopefully we'll see you at some point down the road. If not, there's always Zoom calls like this. But
definitely come and visit and all of that. That would be great.
Awesome. Yeah, we're all very excited. All we keep hearing about is Katy, Texas. So it's the latest and the greatest, which is awesome to see that the team.
I was going to say, I have my boss, Kevin. He's the first K. I'm the second K. K and K. We got it coming.
K and K. I love it. The K and K connection. Well, welcome to the call. We're looking forward to having many, many more calls with you in the future and hearing all the successes you'll have, and obviously challenges that come with that. But that's why we're getting together like this on a routine basis, to develop ourselves as leaders, yes, develop one another, but to also, of course, speak to the wins and talk to the opportunity areas too. So,
yes, sir.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, that's a great send off. It's great hearing from you. And welcome to the team. And for anyone else, please add to the chat if there's any key things you'll take from this call. Again, I borrowed an analogy that seems lost to us as we get older. We don't think about play like that. We don't think about how kids play. But I think there's something to be honed in on in your shift. Again, we're not talking about immaturity here. We're not talking about recklessness. We're talking about a measure of childlikeness in how we approach. We are growing human beings around us, right? We have these preteens to young adults. They're developing in their mind. They're developing in their approach to everyday business. We're teaching them how to run businesses, right? We're teaching them how to run our business and be a part of our successes. So getting into their heads is part of that, right? And how do we think like them, and how do we make it more enjoyable for all parties involved, including ourselves? So outside of that, guys, we will be getting back together for our next call on October 9th, 2023. Not quite a bi-weekly cadence, but definitely not end of month next month, right? So October 9th, that's the goal. That's the hope. Hopefully Monday still is a good time for us to connect. Of course, this could always be shifted if it turns out that not everyone can be on, or at least not the bulk of us can be on the call. But I appreciate you guys joining me today. Hopefully there was some nugget of truth that you were able to grab hold of, something you can put into use in your parks. Guys, have a great time this week. Have a great park, or just have a safe, clean, and fun experience at your parks. You're a big part of that as leaders. Appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great week, guys.
Thanks, Lance.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Lance.
Of course. Thank you.
One 11.